the iPad changed everything. The iPad changed the way we relate to the computer, to technology. Now, universities are using iPads with their students so they can learn faster, learn using technology. What's your opinion about the iPad in the education and the iPad in the life of the people?
Yeah, as you say, the iPad changes everything. Well, you know what, if you were used to using a computer in its modern ways, or obviously an iPhone, the iPad was another representation of it. It was a different input structure, a different type of dimensions, it was a little different than computers before in terms of the human input and output, and that's the way things changed. The mouse changed things just as significantly. All of a sudden you had a mouse instead of commands to cause the cursor, or keys to move the cursor around. I think that in the future we're going to get even more towards natural voice commands, doing almost everything. Voice recognition has taken so many strides and gotten to a point that I really never thought it would get to, as far as understanding what I'm really saying and what I'm meaning. And I find that I prefer on my iPhone, not the iPad, but on the iPhone, I prefer speaking a command. And I'll choose whether I'm using my iPhone or my Android, my Droid S, based upon which commands are accepted by voice, because with voice I don't have to think. Computer technology is supposed to do the thinking for us. And I don't have to think how I'm going to say something, what order I'm going to put the words, which words I'm going to choose, because the language, the spoken language, has to be very robust. So I think that's really more of the future. I also think that eventually all these computer devices are going to have issues, but that's off your question of education. As far as education, computers replaced books a long time ago, and they could present little examples to learn mathematics. That if you were forced to sit through the drills, or you enjoyed sitting through the drills, you could learn from it. You could learn a bunch of history and answer a lot of questions. The computer now could grade your questions and tell you no, go back and read it again, try it again. So the learning was much better than a book. It was an interactive book, and it became animated, it became fun, things that are pleasurable. But I noticed in my time of teaching for 8 years that it didn't draw the students once it didn't have a human quality. The more human quality it had, it would draw students for a year. But they get used to it, and it wasn't quite replacing a human teacher that seemed to have a heart and care about the students. And I think that's in the future, that's going to come. These things are going to understand the voice of the students. They're going to have cameras that notices facial expressions and that sort of thing, and treats them more like a real person. They're going to run in, oh, I want to talk to Android 5 today, my best friend. I think I see that in the future. And then we can get to the point that a classroom of 30 students right now has one teacher teaching 30 students, and a bunch of them are hiding out. They're not paying attention, they're drifting off, they're daydreaming. The teacher's looking for an answer, and they don't know what was going on. And that sort of attention to education. Once you love your computer and it is your teacher, it's your best friend and your teacher, a teacher could never fail. It's going to be a big day for education. The iPad is an incredible step in that direction, because so many times schools have wanted the computers that are more easy to use, more personal, more intuitive, more like people. That's Apple, the Apple platform. But it was always a little too expensive. Now with the iPad, all of a sudden, the way you can price out staffing your computer district with so many thousands of this model computer, so many thousands of another, maybe some towers for video editing for classes, and distribute them. The economics falls into place. Everything's kind of greener, it's nicer, you carry it with you. Something you carry it with you, you feel personal. I mean, I could go on and on, but I think I thought at first the major market for the iPad was education, but I think it's really just the masses of people that want computers simpler.
Okay, Fran Monroy, Caracas, Venezuela. I'm host a radio show in Caracas. Also, I'm a journalist, also a Mac lover for many years ago. I have a question. Two questions, really. The first, we have or will be held a campus party in Caracas at October or so. Will be you in Caracas in campus party? And the second is Google is now the Apple of the 70s. What do you think about it?
Very good questions. I'm glad to meet Apple lovers always. When I was in Brazil, once before in my life, I actually ran into somebody who said to me, no iPhone 3s here yet, or 3Gs. And I had one of my own phone, just to say that I left the first, or at least one of the first Apple 3Gs in Brazil. I was so proud of myself. Caracas. I love to go to campus parties wherever they are. I've fallen in love with this. I make a lot of personal sacrifices to be able to go to campus parties compared to the normal events that I'm invited to. So, of course, if I receive an invitation from the campus party people, I would very, very much love to be in Caracas and help make it a great event because it's people like me. And what was the second question?
Well, it's now Google.
Google, yeah, it's Google the modern day Apple. Well, Apple had a big, huge founding with a couple of young people that didn't have any business experience, didn't have any money, and Google was founded very similar. You know, from these young, it was one of those young startups that came out of nowhere. It became so huge that it went public. It became a public corporation. Its value was so high, and I don't know, I think Apple's well above Google in capitalization and profits and other things right now. But Google is a big contender. Google's play, I think, is out there on, boy, everything's going to be on the cloud someday, and all the benefits of the cloud come to everybody. Well, they don't come to a few people like me because I don't get broadband at my home, and we don't have enough strong laws like we had in the days of telephones when there was a monopoly in the United States and you could not own, use, or purchase your own telephone. We had laws that they had to send phone wires to every single house in their geographic territory, but they don't have to send broadband there today. And I'm only a mile out of town and I can't get broadband. So I'm kind of left out of that part of the future that Google's all about. Who do I think is going to be a winner of sorts? I don't ever think of it that way. Google's doing a lot of great things. Apple's doing a lot of great things. As far as Android versus iPhone, I wish Android weren't here. I don't think it adds better phones to the party. Android, though, is very needed. In the United States, we have a very problematic carrier, AT&T, that everyone complains about drop calls, including me if you live in San Francisco, New York, Los Angeles, and certain other very, very populous places. It doesn't work well when you drive. It doesn't cover as much of the country. And our other carrier, Verizon, did not have the iPhone. Verizon was the better network of the United States. I carry Verizon phones. My Androids are usually Verizon phones. I carry Verizon Wi-Fi's to help my iPhones when they need the help. And it has paid off over and over. I can't tell you how many times I'm in a hotel and the internet fails. I bring out my little Verizon Wi-Fi's that share the internet. So Verizon's going to have the iPhone soon, thank God. But for a long time, we left that hole open for the Android to come in and have huge amounts of sales in the United States. And that was really their kickoff. I think it was a mistake of Apple's that let them in. And I'm sort of sorry to hear. I mean, I have Androids and I like things about the Android. There are some things I use it for because I can speak commands into it that aren't the commands my iPhone understands, and I like to speak.
When did you start to build electronic stuff, and when did you start to build electronic stuff, and who was your inspiration for that?
Yes, I started my electronic stuff when I was very young, like 8 years old. I built incredibly huge science fair projects by the time I was 10 or 11 years old with hundreds of parts and hours, tens of hours of work, and got to know that you could think on little things adding up to something larger, adding up to something larger, and just I can actually get there if I work long and hard in the right direction. I'll get there. Very lucky. I had a ham radio license when I was in 6th grade, about 11 years old. I built my own ham radio by hand, soldered things, so I was a builder. It's very nice when you're advanced in math like an engineer, and you're also used to building things like a technician. So I didn't have to ask other people to do anything I could think of. And what was the question exactly?
Who inspired you to start creating electronic stuff?
My biggest inspirations in electronics were accidental discoveries in books that I read, television shows I watched. I love science fiction stories. I love dreams about something that you would think is impossible, but some people using their brains and their understanding of technology and knowledge knowledge could solve those things. When I was very young, I decided this was going to be close to my heart. I discovered computers were a new kind of like mathematics. It was so interesting to learn. And I knew that that was going to be in my heart forever. Yeah. So from when I was very, very young, I got very, very skilled at the sort of things that I did that started out in computer just because I loved it for a game for myself. Never the idea that I was going to do it to have a company or a job.